All right, guys. It is kind of dark in here. I'm sorry, but my power went out, so I'm recording this on the fly. So today we're talking about how the North and the South separated in terms of what types of things were going on there, how the region was working. So there are four vocabulary words to start with. The first is urban, and that just means city. Second is rural, which is the opposite of urban or country. So think urban, there's going to be lots of people, not very much space, all that kind. Rural is like farms and stuff. Industrialization means the beginning of factories. So when a city is industrializing, that means they're building factories and they're starting to make things in those factories. And then the last one is urbanization. And remember, urban is city. So urbanization is like becoming more city, growth of cities. That's urbanization. So what we're going to look at are some pictures of the North and the South, and we're going to see how those two regions were different. So for example, let's start with the North. The North had a very cold climate in the winter with lots of hills in their geography, just like you can see in this picture. Hills, cold, yada, yada. So that meant that it was really hard to have big farms, and so people had to focus on making money in factories instead of on farms. And then the South is going to have the opposite. They had a long, warm growing season, not those really cold, long winters, and mostly flat geography, which made it easy to grow crops. So this picture right here, you can see this is a field where they're growing something. It's flat, it's warm, easier to grow crops. So what was the effect? What was the result? There were big farms and cash crops, also known as plantations in the South. So you had two totally different developments. The North developed to have factories. The South developed to have plantations and cash crops. So here you go, North, South. So let's check out the economy of these two. We kind of just saw that already with the geography and that effect. So in the North, most people would go to work in factories. That's what they were making most. That's what they were. How people made money in the North was in factories. And so here you'd have lots of people working very closely together, producing things. And a lot of times the individuals wouldn't be making a lot of money, but altogether there's a lot of money being made in these factories. The South, on the other hand, used slave labor to work on plantations. So there would really be one person who'd be making all the money for the entire plantation, and they didn't pay their slaves. They didn't pay a lot of the people that worked for them. So all that money was concentrated in one place. And so you had another big reason why the Southern economy developed like that was because of the invention of the cotton gin. And so the cotton gin, you remember, cleans cotton a lot faster than just picking the seeds out. And so that increased cotton production in the South, which also made it so slavery increased as well in the South. Because the more cotton they could produce, or the more cotton they could clean, then the more slaves they wanted to produce more cotton, so they would be able to sell more and make more money. If you want to see a video of an old cotton gin working, go to bit.ly/DTA cotton gin. It's kind of cool. Just like 20 seconds long. So next, we'll look at how the population changed between the North and the South. In the North, you had lots of urbanization and urban areas. So you had these big cities growing up where lots of people are there together. And one of the reasons why that was happening is because of the factories. And if you have all those jobs in factories really close together, then you're going to have lots of people who move near each other. The South, on the other hand, was really sparsely populated, and it was much more rural. Because the South, you needed lots of farmland for the plantations, so they didn't have people crammed into cities. They had people spread out all over the countryside. So there were less people in the South, and it was less urban. So one of the reasons why this urbanization was happening was because people were immigrating to the USA. And you can see right here, this is the period we're talking about. Immigration is going up and up and up. And each one of those years, those people are coming to the US, but they're coming to the North. The reason why they're going to the North Well, the reason why they were coming in the first place is because there was political persecution in Ireland, Germany, France, Italy, all those places. And there were also famines. We're going to talk about one big specific one in a sec. But they were coming to America mostly to the north. The reason why they were coming to the north was for jobs in the factories, for political freedom. They could vote, they could have control over the people that made the laws for them, all those kinds of things. And in the South, the only people coming were rich people who came to make money owning plantations. And there weren't very many of those. Most of the people coming were not rich. Most of them were pretty poor because they were coming because they didn't have any food in a famine or there was political persecution. So these aren't rich people that are coming to the US. So that big famine that I was talking about before, I think you remember it. It happened right here in 1845. And that was when all the potatoes in Ireland turned black and looked like this. So that was what everybody was eating in Ireland beforehand. And when all the potatoes died, then people literally didn't have food to eat. So no one in Ireland had food, and so they immigrated to the United States. From 1845 to 1854-ish, you had millions and millions of people that came to the US. So as these people would come, most of them would come to cities on the East Coast, particularly New York. New York was like the biggest destination. And the place where all the immigrants had to go through in New York was called Ellis Island. You can still go there today. It's a museum. And that building right there is where every single immigrant that came into New York was processed through that building. And the first thing they would see was the Statue of Liberty when they came into New York's harbor. So the Statue of Liberty kind of became this symbol of people coming to America and people starting a new life in a new place. There is a poem written on the base of the Statue of Liberty. This is just a part of it here, but it's called The New Colossus. And if you want to hear the whole thing read aloud, go to that link. It's only a minute and a half long, so I would say go for it. But think about the themes that they're talking about, right? She says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, right? The Statue of Liberty isn't welcoming rich people with lots of money who are going to buy slaves. No, the Statue of Liberty is welcoming the poor people, the tired people who need a new place to start a new life. That's what America was all about back then. So there are going to be two stories of two different people. Read them and see if you can figure out what the push factor is that made them leave and what the pull factor is that make them want to go to a specific place. So all these people were coming to the north, and these immigrants, they were going there because there were more jobs in the north in the factories, and more factories plus more people meant even more jobs building up and up. And you had these huge urban areas like the city of New York. This is New York right here, that grew because people were showing up with and building factories and building like homes and apartment buildings and all that stuff. Everybody came in like that. Here you can even see some of the other technology that we were talking about. Like here are a bunch of steamboats coming in. There's railroads that go into New York right there. There's a railroad right there. And so these new technologies are also contributing to the growth of the city. Whereas in the South, you still have the steamboats, but because people are making money on plantations, everything is so spread out. And so you don't get those tight-knit groups like you did in New York here. So when all those people came, though, the United States and New York City in particular didn't have the infrastructure to deal with that many people. So it really became not just crowded and together, but really overcrowded. And you had what were called tenements, which were really, really crowded apartment buildings. And a lot of times all the people in the tenements would go to work in the factories and they would work like 12-hour days and come home just exhausted. And there was lots of pollution It was really, really dirty. Like if you watch a Mardi Gras when the horses go by and they just poop in the street, I think there were no cars, so everything was pooping in the street and nobody cleaned it up. They didn't have bathrooms in the buildings. They had to go out in the back to do their business. So there's lots of diseases. These people are going to work. They're coming home at all hours of the night. It was really not the best place to be. So here's an example of what a family would be like. This family actually immigrated from Slovakia in Central Europe. But so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and this would be their only room. There's their kitchen right here. Their bathroom, remember, is not inside. It's out back behind the building. And all of these people only have this one room to live in. And then next door, there's another family. And next door, there's another family. So really, really crowded and really not the best place to be. But it was still better than where they had come from in Europe. So that's why so many more people continued to come. So tomorrow, what we're going to look at is how these divisions between what was going on in the North and the South turned into the Civil War. You got it.